This buddy of mine has watched his marriage disintegrate in the last 5 months after 30 years. 30 years and 2 daughters, one grown, both of them grown. I guess the youngest is 19 now, so she's knocking on their door right there. And you know, it's tearing him apart. It's tearing them apart. You know, his oldest daughter is young in marriage, and they're wrestling with what it means to be married, and what kind of marriage they're going to have, and so on and so forth. And his parents were living with them, and his wife's parents were, mother was going to come and stay with them. So then that changed the whole arrangement for that. There were dreams that they had about their future, you know, that they were going to, that was going to be a part of their retirement that had to die. You know, I mean, it's been tragic. It's been tragic. And, and so, you know, he calls, and he and I get to talking, and you know, I ask him how he's doing, and he asks me how I'm doing, and we both kind of echo Paul to each other, you know, pressed down but not crushed, confused but not in despair, struck down but not destroyed. Well, after being reminded of my words, my friend, who often jokingly refers to himself as the pastor of last resort, he turns to me and says something like, you know, brother, this isn't the absolute worst place to be, because at least we still have Jesus. When all you've ever trusted is being slowly stripped from you, what else is there? Who else is there to depend upon? On Christ, the solid rock I stand. Other ground is sinking. And you can't let your intellect rob you with that. Now, of course, I was in tears after his first line, so you know, I wouldn't bet any money on how well I reconstructed the rest of that. But you know, that might not have been the fact of what he said. It was the truth of what he said. And you know, after being absent from the evangelical tradition for some time now, those words weren't likely to carry very much meaning. But in that moment, the simplicity of this thing that I believed, it was once believed, it was refreshing. And it helped me reclaim some small part of the simplicity of how I've held faith, if not certainty. So later, Leslie and I got to talking, and I recounted the conversation that my buddy and I had had. And Leslie asked me if I still believed in Jesus that way. And I said to her, sure, but that doesn't mean I believe in magic Jesus, you know, who makes everything all right. You know, I've lived too long and seen too much to speak of Jesus that way. And you know, besides, I don't get the impression that our ancestors, when they talked about giving Jesus, were talking about magic Jesus. I mean, you got to think about it. You know, in the midst of slavery, you know, you weren't deluding yourself into believing that somehow magic Jesus was going to show up and everything was going to be solved. That just wasn't happening. But we still sang that song. When I am alone, when I am afraid, when I come to die, give me Jesus. So yeah, I still believe in Jesus, the incarnate one, God with us. That linguistic proxy that we use to speak of a truth and a reality that exists beyond our circumstance. That Jesus, who in the midst of the onset of darkness that was going to be his death on the cross, still thought it important to acknowledge his betrayer as friend. That Jesus is worth it. That Jesus is worth believing. And that, in essence, is about all I have to add to the conversation that we started last week. The rest is kind of just commentary. All right, so the first thing that jumps out at me, I'm looking here. It might be God on the phone.
Jesus on the main line.
Jesus on the main line. Come on. Step to the piano. No. Right, so the first thing that jumped out in that passage about Judas, right? So I spent the week trying to figure out, golly, what stories are there about these intuitions